Hi, this is Autohaus Hamilton TV, and I'm James. May contain traces of nuts. In this video, I'll be talking about the term OEM, what it means and why it does and doesn't matter. Cue title sequence. In the very first video that I did in this series, I looked at the difference between genuine parts, OEM parts, and aftermarket parts. Short version: genuine Porsche parts come in a Porsche box. OEM parts, which is to say original equipment manufacturer parts, are held to be the same as the genuine part, but in the packaging of the part manufacturer rather than the automotive brand. And aftermarket parts are manufactured by a third party. They may be as good as the genuine part, may be different to the genuine part, and may even claim to offer advantages in some way over the genuine part. We'll start with something simple, an oil filter. This is an oil filter suitable for use in 996, 997 Series 1, 986 and 997 Series 1 cars. It's a Mahle filter and comes in a Mahle box. If you want the genuine Porsche filter, in this instance, you'll receive a Mahle filter in a Porsche box. What's the difference, you ask? About 50% by value. With some parts, things are a bit more complicated. If you want rod bearings for your 911 SC, you could buy genuine Porsche, but you might feel that around $60 per bearing shell is a little pricey, considering there are 12 rod bearing shells needed. You've learned that Gleico are the manufacturer, which makes them the OEM, and here we arrive at a sticky patch of gastronomical proportions. First issue is that some years back there were well-documented issues with Gleico rod bearings for SCs. The root cause of the problem was that the locating tangs on the bearing shells were not formed correctly, so that the bearing shells were not held in place correctly. Gleico bearings are manufactured in factories all over the world, and one theory was that the bearings you could buy as OEM bearings were not manufactured in the same factory as the bearings which you bought as genuine Porsche bearings. But it turns out that SC rod bearings have the same dimensions as early 996 GT3 rod bearings, which we have been selling for use in SCs for years, with absolutely no issues. And those GT3 bearings are also made by Gleico, so go figure. Is it still an OEM part if it is sold for use in a different application? Just like every other motor vehicle manufacturer, Porsche do not publicize who manufactures their components, and component manufacturers keep their own counsel too. So a lot of the time it's very hard to know who the OE manufacturer of a part is. Sometimes parts are sold to me as OEM, with no indication of who the actual manufacturer is. Some wholesalers will indicate that a particular manufacturer is the OEM of a part, while also selling unbranded OEM versions of the same thing. The first complication is that being an OEM, unlike Truelove and Herpes, is not forever. The company that manufactures, say, 964 brake discs for Porsche today may not be the same company who supplied them when 964s were rolling off the production line. Fairly recently, Porsche superseded their part numbers for classic 911 brake discs. You may choose to believe that Porsche are still fine-tuning the design and specification of brake discs for cars that were last sold in the 1980s. Or possibly, and this is the theory that I'm going with, the new part numbers indicate a change of manufacturer. Another complication is that Porsche may have more than one supplier for a particular class of part. Almost all of Porsche's clutch parts are made by Sachs, but I've also seen Sachs listed as the OE supplier for parts which I know are manufactured by AP Racing if you buy genuine Porsche. Until fairly recently, it was possible to buy CV boots and flanges from GKN, the OEM, which were absolutely good as this, the genuine Porsche article. These are used in 911s from 1975 to 1985. Those parts have disappeared and now these are sold in their place. Instead of a cast metal flange like the genuine Porsche Like the genuine Porsche part, it's a pressed steel flange. It's still made by the OE manufacturer, but it's definitely not the same as the genuine Porsche item. It's problematic because with the thinner pressed steel flange, the CV joint bolts will be too long, and worse yet, the flange will rub against your balls, and in this case, that's not nearly as good as it sounds. If you buy genuine Porsche round relays, as used in air-cooled 911s, the current version is made in China. Again, this is not startling or newsworthy. The fact is embossed on the outside of the relay. Some people are horrified at the idea of genuine Porsche parts being made in China, but my take on it is that how something is made is more important than where it is made. And it does highlight that OEM is a moving target. None of this is me talking out of school. I have versions of this discussion with customers most weeks. Everybody wants to buy good value, and that, simply put, is why Autohaus Hamilton sells parts. We're here to provide good value alternatives, where they exist, to genuine Porsche parts. We'll also steer you towards genuine Porsche parts, where the genuine part offers advantages over the alternatives. And there are parts where there is literally no alternative to genuine Porsche. There are parts where we can offer you OEM, subject to all of the caveats I've been talking about. And there will also be parts where we can offer quality aftermarket parts that are not OEM. For instance, we sell Zimmermann brake discs. They are made in Germany, and we've never had any issues with them. But they are definitely not OEM. In fact, the story I was told by one of my German contacts was that Zimmermann were not interested in tendering to be an OEM supplier to Porsche or any other motor manufacturer. The real question is, does any of this matter? And yes, it does, but also no, it doesn't. What really matters is whether the parts fitted to your car work as they should. And this is why it matters to buy parts from a reseller that you trust, who will answer these questions honestly and can also explain why they are offering the parts they have on sale. I've seen distinctly so-so parts from OE manufacturers and faultless parts from aftermarket manufacturers. The trickiest part of what I do is trying to work out which is which before too much anguish happens. As ever, thank you very much for watching. In the packaging of the part manufacturer rather than the automotive brand, and we fucked that up.